If you enjoy quiet history like this, consider subscribing before you drift off. And before your eyes grow heavy, share one simple thing so we can place this quiet together in time. Where are you watching from? And what time is it there? The villa is already easing into night. The last light has moved from the peristyle to the high plaster, and the impluvium in the atrium holds a calm sheet of evening. Air comes from the garden with a scent of damp soil and bay. Voices have softened to the tone people use when a day has done its work and there is nothing left to insist upon. Lamps are being readied, not to imitate the sun, but to give rooms their kindest edges. The sleeping room, the cubiculum, does not perform. It is modest, proportioned so that a single lamp can show every shape without glare. The floor remembers heat from the afternoon and gives back a slow coolness to bare feet. A low chest sits near the bed with tomorrow folded inside it. On a narrow table, a bronze basin has been filled with water that is neither warm nor cold, only agreeable. A folded cloth waits beside it, scented faintly with thyme. On the chair back, a tunic rests with its fastenings loosened so no morning will begin with a search. The bed looks simple but shows careful thought. A wooden frame is laced with cords drawn to a firmness the sleeper prefers, neither bored hard nor sagging. Over the frame lies a mattress filled with wool combed free of burr and straw that has been shaken clean. Linen covers it, smooth, flat, and cool, with that particular crispness that comes only from drying in honest air. The pillow is small and supportive, more a measured shelf for the neck than a cushion that swallows the head. There is no ornament that would argue with sleep. Everything in the room exists to let the day fall away in clean pieces. Oil lamps, lucernae with clay bodies smoothed where hands have held them many times, carry patient flames. A trimmed wick rises from the spout. A small pool of oil feeds it with the steadiness of a well-kept promise. When someone crosses the threshold, the flame leans and then rights itself, as if breathing with the room. Set on a low stand, the lamp makes shadows gentle. Borders painted with quiet garlands and fine red lines keep their color without summoning the eyes back from rest. Decoration is allowed to be beautiful, but never demanding, at midnight. Before lying down, the body is invited to forget effort. Hands and face are washed in the basin. The cloth, wrung to a pleasant dampness, lifts the day from the skin without sting. A comb passes through hair in slow strokes. A small drop of olive oil is rubbed across the temples where the late sun laid its polite heat. The sandals are set side by side under the chair. These gestures are not grand. They are permissions. The mind recognizes them from many evenings and answers with an exhale that sounds like relief. Architecture here was measured with rest in mind. The ceiling rises just enough for air to turn without stealing warmth. The door admits a body without asking it to twist. Windows are small, placed high, and fitted with shutters that rotate on quiet pivots. They do not shut out night, they narrow it to a friendly width. When half closed, they let air proceed along the plaster like a thoughtful guest. The room is neither dark nor bright. It is the kind of gray that soothes eyesight used to sunlight. Beyond the doorway, the atrium keeps its court. A rectangle of sky sits within the roof opening, and the impluvium below receives whatever the sky chooses: light, wind, rain, and answers by giving the house a steady center. Even now, as evening deepens, the pool returns the lamp glow from colonnade to ceiling in a trembling pattern that moves like quiet breathing. Every room understands where the middle of the house is, and takes confidence from that understanding. Materials speak softly at night. Stone gives coolness without cold. Wood accepts the conversation of the wind without complaint. Clay holds oil, oil gives light. Linen forgives weight, lies flat, and makes a promise to be easily cleaned. Bronze carries water and rings faintly when set down with a careful hand. Each thing stays inside its best nature, and the room becomes a treaty among patient elements. The household has its own way of lowering itself. Someone checks the height of every wick and makes them alike, so the light throughout the villa feels composed. Someone tests a latch by habit, not from fear, but for tidiness. Someone folds a coverlet so the corner will lie correctly when sleep reaches for it. The kitchen firebed is banked. A last pot is washed and leaned to dry against a peg so it leaves no ring. Shoes line themselves obediently along the wall. When these small tasks are finished, the house sleeps as surely as the people in it do. Listen to the inventory of night, the fountain counting time with 3 soft syllables, fabric whispering under a smoothing hand, a swallow repositioning itself in the dark eaves, a dog across the fields remarking once to the moon and then thinking better of speaking again. If a floorboard in the corridor notes a cautious foot, it does so without drama, and then is satisfied. Sound fades until air itself feels like a blanket. Seasons arrive as manners rather than events. Winter asks for a brazier. It stands at a respectful distance, glowing in its metal belly, sending warmth outward in a calm plume. Windows close almost all the way, but never to stillness. Air must always have a path. A heavier blanket with a tight weave lies flatter and keeps heat near the body without weight. Summer asks for openness. Shutters are angled to accept a cross breeze. Linen grows lighter. Clay jars give water that feels newly drawn even when it has waited since dusk. Both seasons prefer modesty, and the room indulges them. Those who keep the villa running honor the night as carefully as they honor the day. They will rise before others, yet they do not steal from their own rest. A broom leans ready where the first hand will find it at dawn. The cloth used to polish a table is folded with its smoothest edge outward. A small knife for cutting figs has been cleaned, dried, and returned to its place. The kitchen door is barred, not like a portcullis, but like a sentence finished with a period of the right size. In late evening they step softly through the colonnade. They have learned which tiles answer underfoot and which prefer silence. They know how far to turn a shutter so the room will breathe, but moths will not be admitted in any great number. They leave a cup where the right hand expects to find it, and lay a garment across the chair back so no tug will be needed in the morning. Their craft is not only to work, it is to remove friction from the hours that ought to be easy. The language of bedding is precise here. The cords beneath the mattress are retightened whenever the seasons suggest it. The mattress itself is shaken outdoors on dry days so that sunlight can pass through it and take dust away. Linen comes from chests scented with cedar. It is beaten, not scrubbed, then rinsed and lifted onto lines where honest wind does the rest. When it returns to the bed it lies so flat that the palm sliding across it could believe it were touching a lake without ripples. Pillows are modest and exact. There are no heaped mountains of softness. There is one low supportive cushion that meets the neck where the neck wants to be met. If the day has made the feet complain, a folded cloak is set under the calves to ease them. If the shoulders bear the memory of lifting, the pillow is slid a finger's width lower and the mattress accepts more of the load. None of these changes are dramatic. All of them are felt. If you have ever traced the plan of a Roman house with your finger on a drawing, atrium, aile, tablinum, peristyle, you know that the rooms sort themselves into places for display and places for restoration. Sleep happens in the quarter where the house holds its breath. The tablinum, with its business of records and seals, grows quiet. The triclinium, with its earlier plates and careful talk, forgets how many cups were poured. The peristyle keeps its leaves. The cubicula remain, practicing the art of doing nothing loudly. Time at night is kept loosely and kindly. A water clock may be set in a corridor, not to command the hours, but to note them. Its drop and measure repeat with a gentleness that feels less like counting and more like breathing. In truth, the household needs no device to say when sleep should come. Bodies that have met sun and work can tell the hour without numbers. They do not brag about this. They simply close their eyes at the right time and open them when the sky has resumed its mild duties. Even education takes on night's modesty. A scroll read before bed is not raced through. It advances by a hand's breadth, then rests. The mind keeps a single phrase like a pebble in a pocket, and carries it into sleep. A wax tablet lies nearby with a stylus tucked under its thong. A faint impress of figures and lists waits for morning light to be seen clearly again. The lamp's flame, noticing the way the reader's head has grown heavy, shortens itself and asks for no thanks. In a coastal villa the sea arranges the air. Shutters are set to sip salt and coolness in a measured way. Beds are pulled a hand's breadth from the wall to prevent damp from lingering where it should not. Linen is rotated more often, and a bar across the doorway holds a cloak aired by the steady wind. The sound of waves arrives as a long thought, not a shout. Sleep here has the feeling of being breathed upon by something ancient and even-tempered. In an inland villa the fields speak first. Crickets make their busyness known until the dark reaches a certain depth, and then surrender to quiet. The breeze walks the walls slowly, testing each stone and passing on. The perfume of crushed mint near the garden path visits the room and then drifts away. At times a donkey far off considers the moon and says one brief sentence about it. The villa listens and replies with silence. There is a rhythm to extinguishing that is worth noting. The last person awake makes a brief, unhurried circuit. Wicks are pinched to a uniform calm. A door pull is tested once. A shutter latch is set just so. A coverlet is drawn a finger's width higher. On the way back, the hand rests for a moment on the doorframe, a private acknowledgement that the day was seen to its end. Then even that hand gives up its duty and lies down. Some households prefer to fall asleep with the lamp still burning small, as if the room were watching over them. Others pinch it closed and let the darkness become perfectly simple. Either way, the mind is not asked to solve anything. The furnishings are quiet shapes. The paint on the wall becomes a gentle dusk of color. The ceiling ceases to be an idea and turns into a comfort of height. Craft supports this piece. The wooden frame of the bed holds its joints with pegs and glue made from patient boiling, not the hasty fix that creaks in the night. The cords are hemp twisted to even thickness. The linen weave is balanced so that it does not tug to one side in washing. The clay of the lamp shows the maker's fingers if you look closely at noon, but at night those marks vanish into the shared work of giving light. Nothing flashy announces itself. Durability is the only style being practiced. You can follow the line of labor back through the day. Someone carded wool until it surrendered its burrs. Someone beat linen on a smooth board by the well. Someone trimmed wicks and poured oil with a steady hand so no soot would smudge the wall. Someone swept the colonnade from the impluvium outwards so that dust moved toward the garden rather than back into the rooms. Respect for rest is planted long before dark. From time to time a guest arrives who is used to later streets and brighter windows. The first night they listen to the fountain with a puzzled smile. The second night they ask how far to turn the shutters so moths will hesitate. By the third night they have learned that the villa prefers a measured pace. They sleep sooner and wake easier, as if the house had negotiated a truce between them and the hours. Tell me in the comments if you think you would last a week in a place like this, with its early nights and carefully predictable comforts. Some people find that the routine closes around them like a friendly hand. Others prefer the hum of distant carts and voices late. Neither is wrong. Night is personal, and houses know it. Details accumulate toward calm. A cup is placed where the right hand expects it. A small cake wrapped against insects waits on a low plate so that waking early does not require crossing the house. A cloak is folded at the foot of the bed to become an extra cover if wind changes its mind at midnight. The basin's water is refreshed without comment. Order stands in the corner like a kind companion who does not interrupt. Even the way dreams draw their material feels considerate. They borrow from daytime but select the quietest images. The fine grain of a wooden bowl seen in lamplight. The way ripples darken and then brighten on the pool when a draft passes. The soft sound of a wax seal being pressed earlier indoors. Dreams continue the work of rest rather than staging a performance. When a brighter image arrives, the blanket holds steady and lets it pass. The year moves through the villa in calm chapters. In Marcius and Aprilis, windows are opened earlier, and the smell of wet plaster, after a light cleaning, mixes with air from the beds of violets. In Maius the shutters are taught the angle that invites breeze and refuses glare. By Iunius and Iulius, linen changes more often and clay jars are covered with fresh lids to keep water kindly cool. In September, the month of drying figs, the garden gives a warm sweetness even at night. By November, coals return to the brazier, and the blanket with the denser weave comes out of its scented chest. None of this is hurry. It is just what the year asks. Time in the villa means fitness, not strictness. Tasks belong to certain lights more than to certain numbers. The soft gray that arrives before sunrise is for sweeping. The sun at a low angle in late afternoon is for airing bedding. The hour when lamps are lit is for reading or talking in low tones until sentences run out of energy on their own. The blackest part of night is for letting everything stay where it is and be forgiven for it. On the narrow table a reed pen rests with its point trimmed close, its fibers bound so they will neither splay nor scratch. Nearby a tiny pot of soot-black ink sits with a lid fitted against evaporation. A wax tablet bears the shallow memory of today's figures, a measure of grain, a note about olives, the count of clean linens, not carved deeply, because tomorrow will re-smooth the surface and invite new numbers. In the corner, a tall amphora stands on a ring of coiled rope so its foot will not chatter against the tile. Its clay still shows the shadow of the potter's hands if you look at noon. At night it merely holds the weight of water and keeps it cool. A small basket woven from willow strips sits under the chair. It contains nothing more interesting than spare lamp wicks, but their readiness is the kind of wealth that matters after dark. The rug beside the bed is not thick. It is tightly woven and trimmed square so toes will not catch. It holds the day's last temperature and returns it for the single step between standing and sleep. On a shelf near the doorway a folded cloth is kept solely for dimming a lamp. The cloth is clean, the fold crisp, the purpose clear. Next to it a stopper rests, its cork shaved smooth so oil will not creep and stain the neck of the lamp jar. A shallow bowl of bay leaves, changed often, shares its faint perfume with the room. The leaves are not there to impress. They are there because their scent means clean to the nose that lives here. Along the wall, the painted border shows a line of small red squares marching in a measured rhythm. In daylight they blend with green scrolls. At night they calm into the background like polite musicians who have set down their instruments. By the window, a wooden shutter bar lies in its brackets. Its surface is rubbed smooth where hands have turned it for years, and a tiny notch marks the angle that best admits the breeze without inviting moths. Against the foot of the bed a travel cloak lies rolled, used in winter to lift the calves, used in summer as a pillow on a cool afternoon. It smells faintly of smoke and hillsides and tidy distances. Near the basin, a small bronze mirror with a polished face keeps the last light. It is not perfectly flat. Its image softens edges and makes every reflection look like a promise of morning. Tell me in the comments if a home arranged this way would suit you, or if you would miss a brighter street and longer evenings. When rain begins, its sound travels through tile, beam, and wall until it arrives in the room as a steady hush. The lamp shortens itself as if to listen better. Shutters are turned the smallest amount to deny stray drops, and the blanket is drawn a finger higher. In the morning, a dry ring will show on the jar lids where water came to look and then left. If wind rises, the house answers in old wood. Beams murmur acknowledgement, not straying. Leaves in the peristyle tap leaves in a language that has only one verb, to settle. The pool shows the wind in reverse, its surface darkening where the draft presses. A rolled cloak is set along the sill to hush a cunning thread of air that found a gap. On a night after harvest, the smell of dust and sweet straw lingers on the tunic folded across the chair. A body that worked well sinks into the mattress with a heaviness that feels like being agreed with. Sleep arrives quickly, as if relieved to find everything already in order. During a winter storm, coals in the braziers shine with small constellations and a copper kettle clicks as it cools. The shutter gaps admit a thin line of night that never crosses the floor. Hands warm around the cup, then cool against linen. The bed keeps its quiet slope toward comfort. On the eve of a market day, carts pass the road beyond the fields earlier than usual. Their wheels murmur across earth gone firm with evening cold. The villa notes them without adopting their hurry. Sleep continues as a task being properly performed. When the sea is restless, a coastal villa breathes in longer phrases. Air comes salted and decisive, then out again. The beds are moved a hand's breadth from the wall to allow damp to dissipate. By dawn the room smells faintly of kelp and clean boards, and rest has not been disturbed. Linen has its own calendar. It is pulled from chests more often in the warm months and is allowed more time in winter sun when the days are short. Washing is done with patience. Ashes and water make a mild lie that asks for no violence from the hands. Beating on a smooth board lifts dirt without fraying the weave. Rinsing in clear water leaves the cloth with a quiet weight. On the line it aligns itself with the breeze. When dry, it returns to the bed with the memory of air. A blanket with denser weave keeps itself obedient by being folded the same way every time so its fibers learn where to lie. Nothing is scolded into cleanliness. Everything is invited. Light is rationed like a kindness. A lamp set too high makes a room nervous. A lamp set low spreads a basin of amber that forgives corners and coaxes the ceiling to relax. Wicks are trimmed to the thickness of a small quill so their flames will not chatter. Oil is poured slowly along the inside of the lamp's mouth to avoid drips that smoke. In summer, 2 lamps might share the duty from opposite sides of the room. In winter, 1 close companion suffices so heat and light do not argue. The result is not brightness but legibility, enough to see a book, a cup, and the path from standing to sleep without asking the eyes to labor. Now let the evening be taken from the beginning again, not as repetition, but as a gentler lens. The courtyard has cooled. A bird drinks from the shallow rim of the pool and leaves a widening circle that touches stone and vanishes. In the kitchen a lid settles. Somewhere a door eases shut with the self-respect of wood that fits its frame. The room receives these signs and arranges itself toward rest. A person crosses the floor, pauses by the basin, and finds the water precisely as expected. The cloth lifts the day, and the day allows itself to be lifted. The tunic is loosened and set over the chair. The bed accepts weight, sharing it first with cords, then with wool, then with linen, and finally with a small, honest pillow. A book is opened. The lamp makes the page golden without glare. Sentences move at the pace of breath. The peristyle beyond the door is a deeper gray now, a garden drawn with a few strokes. When the book closes, the room does not feel emptier. It feels as if it has just nodded. A last circuit is made. The shutter is set to the remembered notch. The latch is touched once. The lamp is reduced to a halo no larger than a coin, then pinched. Darkness arranges itself into a simple shape. The fountain goes on reciting its 3-syllable poem. The bed is a held field. The air is an unrolled path that requires no walking. Sleep comes as work finishing rather than as a curtain falling. Dreams select modest materials. Wood grain and water ripples and the faint coolness where linen meets the wrist. They say nothing important, and that is their service. The body lets go of the day without dropping anything. If the night changes, if a wind decides to test the shutters, if a cart speaks an early word on the road, the room absorbs it and becomes quiet again. Toward morning, the dark loosens. The shape of the window appears as a paler rectangle. The face understands it without thinking. A hand finds the lamp and closes last night properly. The basin's water refreshes what the night has softened. The tunic becomes a sentence. The sandals complete it. The door opens to the corridor, where the house is already drawing its first lines of day. What slept has not vanished. It has been put away in order. Have you ever imagined living like this, not to reenact a past, but to borrow its steadier edges? A room that asks little, a bed that answers exactly, a lamp that performs a modest task with grace. If a single detail in this slow tour helped your breathing loosen, the basin, the shutter turned just so, the easy ledger of sounds from the courtyard, tell me in the comments so I can set it for you again next time. Morning will arrive without trumpets. First there will be a faint coolness, and a lifting of the dark like a curtain raised by an unhurried hand. The lamp, if it has kept burning small, will look a bit too proud beside the pale window and will be pinched closed with thanks. Feet will find the sandals they expected. Water in the basin will touch the face and return the face to its daytime shape. The garment on the chair will become the body's first sentence of the day. Rest here does not propose to solve any grand question. It proposes to cushion one day against the next so that the mind can pick up its work again without splinters. It is made from stone that cools and wood that murmurs and cloth that forgives and oil that steadies. It is carried by habits repeated until they stop feeling like rules and start feeling like kindness. If you enjoy quiet history like this, consider subscribing before you drift off, and may the next bed you meet be as orderly and as calm as this one. Night can be followed gently as if walking beside a friend who never hurries. The first quiet after lamps are trimmed is like a shallow bay. The villa coasts into it and lets water close behind. A chair is nudged an inch to where it always should have been. Linen takes the shape of a shoulder and holds it as lightly as a palm holds a bird. The fountain repeats its patient syllables, and the mind answers with fewer and fewer of its own. Later, when the courtyard has cooled and the insects are content to remain near the rosemary hedge, air moves along the colonnade with the tact of a courteous guest. In the room, the shutter bar finds its remembered notch and stays there, not tight, not loose. The lamp is lowered so that flame becomes suggestion more than object. Shadow gathers under the bed in a soft triangle, and nothing in the room takes it personally. A little deeper into night, the house is so still that individual details feel present without needing to be named. The glaze on a bowl keeps the suggestion of a moon that is not visible. The wooden doorframe lifts and sets down the same faint scent each time a breeze considers it. Even thoughts behave like well-made furniture. They fit the space without scraping the walls. When someone wakes to turn the pillow to its cooler side, the act is an event only to the pillow. The body keeps sleep as a candle keeps heat when it is carried from one room to another, not blown out, only moved. The mattress accepts the shift and gives it back as a smaller wave. Outside, the pool shows wind in reverse, darkening for a breath and then returning to its neutral silver. On a different night, when distant carts have chosen to leave before dawn, their wheels murmur across the firm road beyond the fields. The villa notices and does not imitate. The sound passes as a traveler passes a gate. The household does not follow. In the bed, a hand that had drifted to the edge returns to the center, and Linen learns the new geometry without complaint. If rain arrives, it speaks in a vocabulary of soft percussion, tile to rafter to plaster to ear. The shutters close the width of a bean pod to deny the stray drop that seeks adventure, and the brazier submits its small constellations to watching. A cup warmed earlier by the kettle cools on the table until it becomes the exact temperature at which the hand remembers it best. Sleep uses the steady weather as a tool the way a joiner uses a plane, removing roughness until only a true surface remains. There are hours when the mind wakes just enough to take inventory of comfort. The bed is steady under the hips and shoulders. The pillow catches the neck without insistence. The air continues to travel the room in a slow circuit, exchanging itself for fresher air with every pass like a considerate partner in a dance. The body thanks these facts and forgets them immediately, which is the most faithful form of gratitude. Sometimes a sentence from a scroll read earlier returns and finishes itself in the dark, the words rearranged to fit the shape of the room. The lamp is out, the idea glows without it. In the courtyard, the water clock keeps its unambitious tempo. No one argues with it. Time here prefers to be a meadow rather than a road. When the deepest stretch of night arrives, everything that can remain still does. Even the dog outside quits telling the moon what it already knows. Linen grows heavier in the hand not because it has changed but because the hand has. Dreams at this point become infrastructural. They maintain bridges and paths so that morning will not have to build them from scratch. Near dawn, the villa seems to tilt almost imperceptibly toward light. Cold surrenders first, edges soften afterward. The shutter bar cools and then warms again under the fingers that test it. The lamp, if it has kept a coin of fire all night, looks proud for a moment, and then accepts being pinched closed. Water in the basin remembers the shape of the bowl as it touches the face, and teaches the face the shape of the day. The last minutes are unremarkable by design. A garment becomes a statement, sandals complete the grammar of standing, and the door opens on hinges that have been oiled at sensible intervals. The courtyard collects the first bird calls and redistributes them along the colonnade. The bed remains behind, clean and flat and ready to hold another set of hours when evening asks it to. What was borrowed from the night is returned in order. Before the sun arrives in full, the villa rehearses its smallest perfections. A broom waits with bristles trimmed square. A jug is set with its handle turned to the habitual hand. The line of shadow under the bed withdraws by a fingertip. The day will inherit a room that behaves itself. If any moment in this slow walk help loosen your breathing, the lamp reduced to a halo, the basin's ready water, the shutter at its remembered notch, mention it softly in the comments so I can set it for you again next time. And if you enjoy quiet history like this, consider subscribing before you drift off, whenever drift finds you. The villa at night is less a building than an arrangement of agreements. Stone agrees to hold the day's heat only until dusk. Wood agrees to answer wind without complaint. Cloth agrees to accompany skin without clinging. Oil agrees to give light and then retire without leaving soot on the plaster. These agreements are old and were made by hands that are not present at this hour, yet the agreements keep themselves faithfully, which is why the rooms feel trustworthy. Walk the peristyle slowly and the world reduces to exact textures. The first column is cool where the night has rested against it. The next keeps a trace of afternoon because it faces a sheltered angle. Floor tesserae are a record kept in stone, a gray square polished by sandals, a red triangle that has resisted every attempt to dull it, a narrow flaw filled long ago that now reads as a subtle stripe. The mind counts none of this, the feet remember anyway. The lamp on the stand is a familiar shape, a small boat with its prow extended into a spout. Its clay is the color of baked bread. When lifted, it tells the palm how much oil it holds by the particular way weight sits near the wrist. The wick gives a flame the size of an almond and accepts corrections with dignity when trimmed. Set on a low table, the lamp does not give orders, it allows edges to become forgiving. Beds are renewed by small maintenance. When daylight still lingered, a cord was tightened until it sang softly under a finger. Another was loosened by half a turn until it settled. The mattress was shaken until dusk gave up its interest and drifted away in the courtyard's sunlight. Linen returned from the line smelling faintly of leaves. Tonight that work is invisible, which is the point. Sleep rests best on tasks that have already been completed. The shutters are managed like musical instruments. A bar rotated a finger's width alters the pitch of incoming air. A second bar, lifted and set down again, changes the way the scent of wet earth drifts through the room. The ideal angle does not exist on paper. It exists where the skin senses movement but nothing flutters. Once found, it is remembered in the body like a tune. Some nights a cat selects the warm square left by a folded cloak and makes itself into punctuation at the foot of the bed. It pretends indifference to the lamp and tells no stories, yet its presence edits the room. When the breeze moves, the cat's ear acknowledges and then returns to stillness. Even this small life teaches the furniture to relax. In the kitchen the smell of supper has become a memory rather than an event. Bread that cooled on a board earlier left a dry sweetness in the air. Figs were halved and then covered against flies. A trace of their perfume still lingers at the far end of the corridor. Pots are clean and stacked upside down so that their rims will not collect dust. The fire bed is a calm geometry of ash. A door knows it is allowed to rest. Not all rest is lying down. The steward sits for a time on the threshold with a cup of water, listening to the house as a gardener listens to weather. He takes note of nothing specific. He only confirms that the usual quiets are in their usual places. When he rises, he leaves no sound behind, as if sound itself had followed him for a word and found the word unnecessary. A child sleeps in a smaller bed against the inner wall. Their breathing coordinates with the fountain so neatly that the room seems to rock a boat that has not been built. A toy made from an olive pit and a bit of cord lies fallen beside the chair, rescued earlier from the mouth of a puppy who found it interesting. Morning will discover it without scolding and return it to a small shelved box where treasures keep each other company. The balneum is quiet now, but it has left the household willing to sleep. Earlier the warm room coaxed tight muscles to uncurl. Steam rose along polished stone and left it darker for a while, as if the slabs had taken the evening into themselves and cooled it. Towels were hung evenly so that tomorrow their edges will dry at the same rate. The last sound before the lamps were turned low was the soft slap of water against a basin lip, followed by somebody saying nothing in particular in a kind tone. On coastal nights, salt lives on the sill after a day of wind. The graininess is noticed by fingertips and then forgotten. A cloak is spread across the chair back so that damp does not linger where it should not. In the inland hills, by contrast, air comes like a visitor who first waits at the doorframe and then remembers itself welcome. Either way, the room insists on moderation, not bright, not dark, not hot, not cold, a middle path for sleeping. A scroll left open earlier has been rolled with the care given to quiet company. The papyrus fibers remember the curve and accept it, and the thong that holds the roll is neither too loose nor so tight as to leave a dent. A wax tablet is nearby with characters impressed shallowly, a note about a jar to be mended, a count of olive oil remaining, a reminder to beat linen on the smooth board before noon. Work for tomorrow is parked in the right light and asked to wait there. Tools for morning are already aligned. The brush that sweeps the colonnade stands with its bristles trimmed square. A bucket is placed where the hand expects it, and not one step farther. The line under the eaves is free of knots, so cloth will not crease where it dries. Order here is not ceremony, it is the reduction of friction. The fewer decisions a person must make before breakfast, the better the sleep before it. Weather lets itself be felt without drama. Heat lightning flowers beyond the fields and does nothing more than offer a distant flash on the highest part of the wall. A winter frost will come sometimes with its own silence, making the lamp smell slightly different when it burns near the shutter. Rain is its own instrument. It chooses the tempo and the villa agrees to play accompaniment in wood and clay. The long table in the tablinum has been cleared. Signets have been put away. The seal wax cooled earlier into small round mirrors with faint fingerprints along their edges. During the day the table carries the public face of the house, measures, messages, small negotiations. At night it is a plain piece of wood that appreciates being only wood. Even furniture deserves uncomplicated hours. If a traveler is staying the night, the guest bed follows the same rules as the master's. Linen is fresh. A cup is placed where a right hand will reach in the dark without searching. A stool near the door holds the guest's bundles so waking will not begin with bending to the floor. The house offers its manners without commentary, and the guest sleeps earlier than at home, surprised and pleased by the way the room makes decisions for them. Candles are uncommon here. Oil is the polite light. It burns low, accepts correction, and leaves little trace. When the flame is covered by the folded cloth, no smoke panics upward, the last breath curls and is gone. The room keeps the scent of clay and clean fiber and faint bay leaves. When people speak softly near such a lamp, silence treats their words like puzzle pieces and immediately finds where each one belongs. Dreams in a place like this do not rush toward cliffs or speak loudly. They are literature written on water. A hand that lifted a lid, a reed pen that left a darker dot where it paused, a fig sliced clean in one motion, these are images enough. The mind walks across them barefoot, uninjured, and arrives on the far shore slower and kinder than when it set out. Aging is given its comforts. The older aunt sleeps in a room with fewer steps to the basin and a lamp placed nearer to the bed. The shutter notch she prefers is marked with a tiny cut that only her fingers notice. Her pillow is filled a little higher. In the morning, she will be the first to remark on the quality of the breeze. At night, the house shapes itself around her experience and asks for no thanks. The garden continues its diplomacy with the air. Lavender keeps its force even after dark, though it speaks more quietly. Bay holds the memory of heat and releases it one breath at a time. A pot of mint cooler than its neighbors gives back the day like a story told without exaggeration. The room takes each of these scents and reduces them to the thinnest lines so that they sketch the air rather than color it. Footfalls at night are educated. People have learned which tile asks to be tested near the edge and which answers best in the center. The door to the storeroom likes to be guided with a palm near the hinge. The latch on the small chest rewards a touch just below itself. None of these are secrets. They are simply the kind of knowledge a house shares with those who listen. Sleep benefits from such small schools of practice. Textiles have biographies. A blanket woven by a neighbor shows a tiny change in pattern where the weaver's child tugged at the loom once during a summer noon. Linen that has served 4 seasons drapes differently than linen new from the line. A repaired seam in a pillow admits air more slowly there and makes a barely audible sigh under the cheek. These biographies are felt rather than read, but they add up to trust. The brazier's bowl keeps its modest stars. Coals veer from orange to a deeper, almost plum-colored red. When a poker touches them to make more room for ash, their sound is like the smallest bell, as polite as a nod. Heat travels outward without gusts, and the portion that arrives at the bed arrives already softened by air. Winter's reprimands are reduced to reminders. On a moon-bright night, the room obtains a second kind of legibility. The shutter gap writes a pale stripe across the floor, then across the lower part of the chair, then lets the stripe dissolve into the rug. The lamp chooses to be absent so the moon can perform its borrowed work. Shadows of leaves move along the far wall as if someone were reading slowly with a finger. Nobody minds being read to. Storage has its grace. Amphorae are kept on rings of coiled rope so their feet will not chatter against tile. Jar lids are shaved smooth so oil will not creep and stain. A stamped mark on one vessel announces a year and a batch, not because anyone is counting obsessively, but because memory appreciates help. At night the marks are useless. They become only the faintest texture under a hand that checks for neatness. The peristyle pool has a voice that changes with the smallest weather. On one evening it suggests a whisper, on another it speaks 3 round notes. Sometimes it becomes nearly mute and only nods at the stars. A household that listens to such small grammar learns to pace itself. The sleepers share in that grammar even without hearing it directly. Rhythm is contagious. If the wind fails completely and the air grows too still, shutters are opened 2 fingers wider and a door along the colonnade is set ajar. With those small acts the room resumes its slow exchange with night. No one calls this technique by a name. People simply know when the lamp begins to show a taller flame that breath becomes shy. Then they teach the room to breathe again. The rug by the bed is a study in restraint. Its pattern repeats past noticing, which is a kindness at midnight. It keeps the day's last warmth and returns it for the bare step that leaves the sandals and seeks the covers. Edges are kept square so toes will not catch. When beaten, it emits a cloud that shows the rectangle of its outline on the courtyard air, then vanishes like a drawing wiped from a slate. Corners matter. Dust chooses them by instinct. During the day a feather brush walks the corners, pushing grit forward just enough that the broom can inherit it. At night the corners perform as shadows should. They make the room readable by giving it depth. The mind, noticing their calm, remembers to put its own corners in order and then chooses sleep. Writing about sleep can stamp on the very thing it wants to protect. The villa's method is to avoid talking and to demonstrate instead. A cup placed where a hand will find it, a shutter notch remembered, linen that lies flat because someone minded the line and the wind at noon. Examples outnumber instructions, and rest is the result. On the nights when someone wakes thirsty, the cup by the basin answers in the dark as if it were a familiar face. Water takes the exact curve of the rim, and then returns to stillness without splashing. Hands are dried on the cloth that lives there, folded to present a fresh edge. Sleep resumes with no more ceremony than lowering the eyes. The bed continues its gentle argument against hurry. The mind that drifts before sleep often chooses a craft to think about. How the joiner set the bed's mortise and tenon, how the weaver measured the warp by the length of an outstretched arm, how the potter found a center that was truly central. Thinking about craft is like thinking about breathing. It never alarms, it simply coordinates. Soon even these thoughts lie down. At some hour, no one can say which, the cricket in the wall ceases, and the silence that replaces it is not empty but full of kind attention. The room seems to lean toward the sleeper as a friend leans toward a friend about to speak. But no one speaks. The fountain resumes the role of narrator and tells the simplest story in the world. Now. Have you ever imagined living like this, with each evening becoming a set of competences instead of a performance? Tell me softly if the idea appeals, or if you would prefer a street of late voices and stalls lit bright. Knowing where your comfort lives is the beginning of resting well anywhere. Dawn, when it comes, behaves like someone entering a library that has been open all night. It does not cough. It does not shuffle its feet. It lifts the light a little at a time until titles can be read on the spines of things. A basin receives a face. The face gives the basin back a calmer expression. The first sandal strap is tightened. The second affirms the choice. Before the household rises, one person will sit again at the threshold with a cup, this time warmer, and confirm that the villa woke as gently as it fell asleep. He notices the faint smell of damp clay cooling, the faint trace of smoke gone from the lamp spout, the faint sound of the first bird clearing its throat. He nods to no one, which is the right number to nod to, and sets the day in motion.